Perfect timing.
I'll be right back.
So the Three Owls podcast began, we're going to say about circa 10 years ago when Haley and I had an idea to do a podcast. We came up with the idea to get together and basically just have a bunch of ramblings of our thoughts and conversations that we normally share because we're hilarious.
Yep. And so basically the end of 2022 was a nightmare, and we decided that memes were the way forward. We're just getting on board with the rest of the world. And one came across our awareness of 3 owls in a trench coat, just basically trying to disguise themselves as a chick, which felt oddly accurate some days. Just 3 owls in a trench coat trying to figure out how to be life.
So that's basically the premise of this podcast. We are 3 owls in a trench coat.
Yep.
Just kind of trying to figure out life. You will see all sorts of different topics on this podcast. We will range from some self-care, meditation,
mental well-being, how to promote those things for yourself in a way that we use, because we're trying our best to pretend that we're not 3 owls in a trench coat. So also we're both mothers, and yes, we live in what is a fairly harsh climate. So being able to basically layer a bunch of stuff together. So in my mind, I see the 3 owls as being like different components of who we are in our lives, and being able to like bring all of that together, because the number of times we've said, why don't people talk about this? So here we are talking about it.
Yeah. And we hope you enjoy it.
Yay!
So we'll start out with a little bit of a disclaimer, which we probably should have done 2 minutes ago, which is we've never done this before. We don't really know what we're doing. We will apologize for poor audio, poor lighting, the glare in my glasses, the me saying 40,000 times between now and the end of this.
I didn't do my hair.
All of that. We'll apologize for all of that right now. And we will eventually get better at it, we hope, because we hope to do this for a little while longer.
For the record, if you're supposed to do one thing that scares you every day, like, this is it. Like, welcome to my terror. Welcome.
The other thing I will also share is today we're recording at Haley's house, and she has a 7-month-old?
7 months on
7-month-old. 7-month-old soon. So if you hear some things in the background, we will apologize in advance. And we also have our third owl. I've nicknamed her our third owl, Bella, Haley's dog, who may enter the screen at any given point.
Just to say hi. Tap in. Welcome. So the premise of how we're going to lay the podcast out is at the start of every episode, we'll have just the tip, which is an overview of all of the things that we're going to discuss for that episode. And then we'll move into Spin Me a Yarn. Also with the 3 owls, because all of the witty yarn related things were taken. Because we're about 10 years behind actually starting this. But yeah, we'll get into Spin Me a Yarn, which is kind of just us discussing the things that we want to discuss today. And then moving into my best part of my best day, which is our gratitude section. And then, we'll leave you with some ideas. That's kind of our plan.
We hope.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Roughly.
So today, being that hopefully you're going to be viewing this podcast somewhere in the mid-January range. We're recording it sort of early-ish part of January. We were hoping to discuss sort of the, at the risk of sounding cliche, the new year and what we have chosen to do with that new year. Like Haley alluded to earlier on in the podcast, 2022 ended up being a little bit of a gong show for both of us. And we decided that enough was enough. We were going to finally buckle down and do this podcast. And why not start right at the beginning of the new year?
Whilst being completely underprepared and just very enthusiastic.
Why not? Just dive right in. Dive right in.
So, yeah.
Oh, what I should say also because we're uber prepared. All of the show notes and any of the sort of table of content summary items, any of our social media contact, our email, all those types of things will all be in the show notes or in the description box below. So you can just tap down there and look if we can figure out how to do that. If we are also really keen and Haley figures out how to do this, because I'm not sure I will, we'll be able to do like some timestamps. So if you really want to skip over the introductions, you can do those, you can do that. And if you just want to go to our gratitude section or however you want to, you'll be able to do that right at the bottom of the video.
Yes. So I guess the very first place to start, now that we've kind of given you an overview, is who the hell are we? And so, as we mentioned, I'm Haley Stowe. And we have been friends since this random event in 2009 where I tried to write on her t-shirt. And it was a white t-shirt. It was a team event, all very normal, I thought. Not so much.
No.
And this is why we work, is because I want to write on white t-shirts and Terry
I do not.
does not. So yeah, big sky thinking, detail orientated. So hopefully this melds really well. And yeah, so I'm obviously Australian, and my child is screaming in the background. I'll be right back.
I'll start my introduction. Haley alluded to, we met quite some time ago. We think it was 2009-ish. We became instant friends, regardless of the fact that she tried to write on my shirt and was actually successful in writing on my shirt. And side note, she was also cutting sleeves off of other people's shirts. Like, this was super invasive for me, for this total stranger to be going around ruining other people's perfectly white shirts.
Pleasantly persuasive.
So it was obvious very early on that Haley and I were going to be fast friends, and maybe we'll save that story for another time about how we initially became friends and Haley's first impressions of me.
Our first hook. It's our cliffhanger.
The first hook. The first hook. So come back for episode 2 where we share a little bit about how Haley and I got really quick friends. Haley thought a little bit friendlier.
Yes.
And so... yeah, we met in 2009. There's been a bit of a history of us leading a little bit of a parallel life throughout that. And again, we'll save some of those details for later. But as Haley mentioned, she's Australian. I'm from Canada. I was born and raised in Newfoundland. So you will hear a little bit of an accent. You'll probably hear a bunch of sayings that you've never heard before. And to sort of put it out there at the very beginning, yes, I am from Newfoundland, and you'll hear me talking about all kinds of things, which is where Spin Me a Yarn sort of came from.
Also, we could probably list this as educational because it's culturally educational.
It is. Yeah.
So I'll say things like, lock it in, Eddie, which means nothing to pretty much the entire North American population, but is a very specific term for anyone who's Australian. Anyway, lock it in, Eddie. So... what else I guess why we started the podcast.
Before we do that, let's do a quick, so Haley mentioned that we're both mothers.
Yes.
Do a quick little, I have a husband and 2 small children. My children are 5 and 3. They will soon be 6 and 4. So I have an experience of a toddler and a sort of early school age child. Like I already mentioned, I'm from Newfoundland, and you know, I love long walks on the beach, that sort of thing. I'm a big fan of knitting, so you'll see and hear lots of knitting content.
Knitting with you.
I don't, which I just realized my 3-year-old who demanded a pair of red socks yesterday. I'm wasting precious time where I could be knitting some socks. So
You should go get that.
I'm going to go get that while Haley continues to tell you about sort of who she is and her mom journey. I'll be right back.
So I essentially came to Canada. I've been coming to and from Calgary for a really long time. I have a really good base of girlfriends here, and met my husband, created a child. So yeah, that's pretty much the very, very short version of it. I spent a lot of money coming to and from Calgary, and I had been trying to move here for a really long time. But in amongst all of that, I had lots of learnings that I needed to go through, and that's part of what it is that we want to talk about on this podcast, is the phases of life and how things can kind of mesh together, and that reflection point of being able to look back and be like, like I kind of needed that for all of this stuff. My little boy is 7 months on Thursday, and yeah, we have been really enjoying 95% of him, and the other 5% is pretty much just wanting to go to sleep. But
or poop.
I don't mind the poop.
The poop's kind of fun.
I just think, like, we're also historically both movement-based therapists, so athletic therapist, exercise physiologist. So like the physiology and the importance of poop is something that we talk about regularly.
It might even have its own segment. We have our own segment on poop alone. I've actually jokingly said I was going to write a book about poop and all of the different types of poop that you get. So like there's the baby poop. We were also runners as well. We've run marathons together. Those types of things. So if poop is not your thing, this might not be the podcast for you. If you're a 5-year-old boy, however, this is your jam, because poop is everything that a 5-year-old boy talks about.
So yeah, for the we didn't have to become mothers to talk about poop. We were already doing it before we had to like interact with it on a regular basis. What else? So yeah, exercise physiologist, now psychodynamic therapist, who is slowly trying to create a space for all of that in Calgary. So yeah, I actually just had an email this morning trying to set up a bit of a community-based stretch group where I live. And yeah, community is also something that we're really passionate and is important to us. And I think more so for me anyway, because I'm now in this new phase of life, being able, and a lot of my girlfriends have either no kids or their kids are a bit older, being able to step out and find other people that are in that same phase or that same kind of bucket of time. Yeah.
Are we in Spin Me a Yarn?
Yeah, we can go straight. So the next phase, which will be, as we said, itemized in the show notes, is going to be Spin Me a Yarn. And that's where we're at. We're
going to talk a little bit about basically the new year. I sort of thought I would start out with my ideas around New Year's and how I feel about the new year. Spoiler alert, don't really care, really. So I'm not into New Year's resolutions. If that is you, that's your jam, great. I typically do things when I feel like it, and I don't use Monday or the new year to do that. However, having said that, I also don't I don't have a problem with people who do. So if that's something that is, if you're using January 1st as a date to do something, go for it. I happen to use Wednesday as a day to decide to do something, whatever that happens to be. So that's sort of my thought on the new year. Now, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and sound like a bit of a hypocrite, because 2022 was a little bit of a gong show. Actually, maybe I'll do a quick little summary of kind of what happened for me near the end of 2022, which is part of what spurred this conversation. Mm-hmm. So in September of 2022, I was diagnosed with stage 3C1 cervical cancer, adenocarcinoma. So first off, if you are watching this and you are a female, or if you're a male, go get your physical, go do your things, the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. I was an adamant healthcare professional, and I went to my doctor regularly, and this particular situation got missed thanks to, do I dare say the C word? So with COVID and all of the changes in how healthcare was happening, I ended up missing a physical. And because of that, this got a little later than it maybe. We're going to have to edit a whole lot of that out because I'm going to piss a lot of people off. Anyway,
Or we can just be wild and go edit free.
Go edit free.
Please.
Let's do it.
Because it's kind of like, it's just life. What happened was you missed a physical.
Yeah.
And then you got diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah. And it sucked.
It sucked.
So ended up in the emergency room, got the diagnosis, and then it sort of flew. And then the rest of the year is a bit of a blur for me because I went through treatments and all sorts of things. So if you are a human and you're watching this, go get your physical and get your stuff checked because it's super important. So that's sort of how 2022 ended for me. That's kind of what spurred this conversation. You know what? There's no better day than to do this other than today, and it just so happened to be the new year. So why not? We'll throw our hat in the ring, and here we are on the interwebs, being vulnerable and God forbid, in my case, wearing lipstick that on this video looks way too dark. But whatever, you'll see me in my real self throughout this journey tons, I'm sure. So that's kind of me and sort of January for me and what I like to do, which is not typically do resolutions. It's just do what works, and it just happened to work in January.
Yes. So resolutions, I tend to just... I do a thing called a yearly compass, which I've done for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
Which I love because I'm a big fan of reflection, and then just taking the time to think about what it is that you want to create for yourself in the next 12 months, or beyond, really. And so I have found myself in this new position because this is the first year that I'm starting out in January as a mother. And what it is that I want to do in that space, but then also sort of reclaiming or refinding myself as an individual separate to that title, and what I want to do career-wise, or etc., etc. So, and also I love a bit of astrology, and so for me, the new year doesn't really start until March, which gives you a really nice buffer. For me, it's just like, well, January to March, I've got all of this time to like really think about things and put things in place, because things aren't actually going to kick off until that time of the year. And I love a bit of a buffer because I just don't want to have to be pressured to create things straight away when some things need a little bit of mulling. So the end of 2022 for me, which prompted my saying yes to this, was that like mid-year I had a pretty traumatic birth with Jack, who is awesome. And then we actually lost a baby via an ectopic pregnancy, and I had an abdomen full of blood requiring surgery in early December. So December in and of itself has been medically and seasonally enforced rest because I couldn't really do anything. So that's... I don't know, I feel like I kind of faced death twice. The foothills I'm very familiar with. I've kind of faced death twice, and then was like kind of by Terry's side while she was going through all of her stuff. And literally.
Like literally.
Oh yeah, we're across the other
across
side.
the hall from each other. In a city, we live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, in a city of 1.4 million people. Our best friends across the hall from each other.
Yeah. It was my last night, and your second to last night. Yeah. So like things are wrapping up, and just like, you know what? We just really need to celebrate by being on the gynecology ward across from each other. Yeah.
Which also is part of it. Like Haley and I had this conversation about the universe putting things in our space.
Yeah.
And that was another trigger for us to actually hit record.
Yeah.
Hitting record has been a long time coming. And sitting in a hospital room with your best friend in a hospital gown, and you in a hospital gown
with IVs,
and just the fact that you are in a city of 1.4 million people and you are across the hall from each other, the universe is putting you in each other's space, and telling you need to do something. So this is us doing something.
Yeah. And I think too, like, and part of it was, I think for me, the process of facing fear, etc., like, and putting yourself out there. Post childbirth, I could see myself doing things like that, because all of a sudden I'm like, well, there's really nothing to lose. Like, I'd already lost 1.5 or 2.5 liters of blood just giving birth, and then I did it again 6 months later. So I'm like, well, why not?
Why not?
Like, it can't be as painful as that, right? So here we are, and we, like us in particular, are healthy and happy. Yeah. Well, we're in the process of recovery to being awesome.
Yeah.
Again, we're just like on the spectrum, we're just like a little bit less awesome than what we normally are, physically speaking.
Yeah.
But spiritually, phenomenal.
well, spiritually, you might be phenomenal. I'm still on the
No.
spectrum.
Yeah.
Again, part of the reason why we wanted to do this, because we wanted to normalize some of the conversation around, you know, health, mental health, women's health, specifically. I had a conversation with my sister-in-law, who is an amazing human. You need to go check her out. If she allows me to, I'll put some of her contact information below. Look her up on our website. She does leadership coaching. She and I had a conversation around doing this podcast, and I had said to her, and I got fairly emotional having this conversation with her. If I can save one person's life from cervical cancer, or from any cancer for that matter, or for any health reason, if I can trigger somebody to go to see a physician that they haven't seen, or take care of their body in a different way, that for me is all more than worth it. That is the reason why I do this. If I can have one person not have to go through what I went through physically and emotionally, then it would be worth it.
And I think too, it's kind of, for me, it's a bit like putting your money where your mouth is, because I spend so long talking to people about like what it is that they want to create and who they want to be, and like overcoming their own internal obstacles. And I've done a lot of things, but I've also done a lot of things that are easier than this. Like, I'd rather train for 6 months for a marathon and then run in 38 degrees Celsius for 5.5 hours, because I'm not a fast runner, than be in this space. Which I love people, so it's really odd to me, but what it is it's the sense of control. Like, once it's out there, we don't get to be a part of it. And like,
and you guys have opinions about stuff. You'll have opinions about my lipstick color, or whether that lamp behind us is cute or not. Very concerned about the lamp. I've got a hair tickling my chest, and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah. So I think there's essentially what we're saying is, and we're literally using Brene Brown's Daring Greatly book to prop this up.
How ironic.
Yeah. So it's like, get in the what is it? Her thing at the start.
Get on the court.
Get on the court. Get in the pit. Like, be in the space.
Yeah.
Arena.
Get in the arena.
Yeah. So
sorry, Brene Brown, if you're watching this, because let's shoot for the stars.
Also happy to be one of your clinical therapists. Well, actually, I'm not a clinical therapist. Happy to be one of your psychodynamic therapists for any future things. Currently reading a book.
Socials
Map
below.
of the Atlas.
Yeah.
Oh, Atlas of the Heart. It's audio. I don't have the actual. It's really good so far.
So that's kind of what brought us here, who we are. What else do we need to talk about? Oh, like new beginnings. The
Yes.
January thing.
The
January thing. Do you want to start? You're a bit more into the
January
thing than I am.
So the Yearly Compass is a free, it's like a little booklet that you get, and it really outlines different questions, and it's got, like, you don't have to write a novel about anything. It's just got little boxes that you can fill out, and it really helps you bring to mind like the important things that happened during the year. And so you'd be surprised, like, thinking back, oh, this happened in March, this happened, like, because by the time you hit December, everyone's fatigued and you're like, I just want to move on to the next. But the struggle with that is moving on to the next and not reflecting on what's happened is you can miss some of the gold that's in there. And also you can miss some of the things that need celebrating. So, like, I gave birth, we had a bunch of family around, like, I had to rely on really good girlfriends and their extended families to feed my family for a couple of weeks. And being able to celebrate and say thank you for all of that is really, in my mind, it gives me joy to be able to do that. So being able to sit down and be like, oh yeah, so like I got 8 lasagnas, which were fabulous. And the process of doing that prompted me to like remember to write Christmas cards. So it's stuff about being able to, for me, it's the reflection that I like. And then seeing how far I've come when you look back, because when you write stuff down, it exists.
So the thing that I was going to mention was Haley and I have these conversations like on the regular. Haley and I talk often about these types of things. And so sitting down and hitting record and actually putting it out there to the universe for people to see and for people to judge and to make commentary on, you know, all things, the things that we're talking about. And like I said, you know, whether we think that lamp is cute or whether my lipstick is too dark, we can, is he going to join us?
I'm just going to
sit off the side. Okay.
Side.
So we have a special guest here that you can't see, but he is really stinking cute. Anyway, so he's our third owl today.
We've got 4. It'll
be like 12 hours.
And a dog make up 1, right?
Yeah.
Small baby riding a dog. There you go.
There you go.
In a trench coat.
There'll be no dogs harmed in the filming of this podcast. Please don't hate us in the comments below. So,
I'm not going to read them.
Yeah, or do. We don't really care. So yeah, spin me a yarn. We'll definitely read them, but we won't fuss over them because that's kind of what this whole point is. Earlier, Haley had mentioned something about being not scared to do this, but there's 100 other things you'd rather do other than, you know, put yourself out on the internet because of the control thing. I kind of feel the opposite, where I don't, not that I don't care, because I do care. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't. But I've had a lot of really intimate moments with rooms full of physicians.
Oh, yeah.
So my modesty is kind of out the window. If you don't like my hair, or if you think I've said too many times, I'll probably go and change it. And, you know, if I didn't like it too, but it's all like, I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
I think it's the difference between someone offering constructive feedback versus just being a whipping post.
Right.
And I think, and because we're coming to this so late in the game, comparatively, I've like listened to a lot of different podcasts where people have responded to the whipping post comments.
Yeah.
Or they've let the whipping post stuff impact them. And like, let's be honest, I don't have a lot of sleep. Like, I'm in terms of vulnerability, like, things go deeper than what they normally would because my resilience isn't as high.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in my, like, a normal sleeping cycle. And also, like, he's still figuring out life and I'm figuring out life with him. So it's just being able to hold space for that stuff. And our brains are naturally geared to take on more negative than positive things anyway. Thanks.
So you didn't know you were going to get a biology lesson or an anatomical lesson.
See,
there's going to be so many lessons. This
is the thing.
You know, having said all of that though, that's another, all of the reasons why we're doing this, that's one of the reasons why we're doing this, because chances are there's some mom out there who is struggling with not having enough sleep, or someone who has a friend that they haven't seen in ages who makes up a podcast so that they can have an excuse to see each other because she's got a new baby and she just had cancer. Like somewhere there is somebody that can relate. That's how I feel. Maybe that's, now that I'm saying it out loud, sounds a little bit arrogant. It's not meant to be arrogant. It's meant to be that, like,
it's arrogant. I think it's just like, it's what the premise is recognizing that we are everyone. Yeah. Like we've actively sat in rooms together where you like someone will be at the front of the, like up on the stage talking about their life and you see yourself in that person. Yes. And it's not and that person, like at the time that we were doing that, I was a 30-year-old white female from Australia sitting in a room full of Canadians. And like the dude on stage, I don't even remember, but it was definitely over 50. And like, I'm like, oh, like the thing that you're struggling with is something that I'm struggling with in a different context, but the same theme, the same feeling, the same like point of vulnerability. And like, I took something from that and I learned something from that. And that sense of sharing is really important to me, and that's partly why we're doing this as well. Right. Yeah. I think we're probably going to be like 6 episodes in before we actually figure out what it is that we're doing here. We know what we want to accomplish, and it doesn't have a ton of structure. Which I love. Which she loves, and I don't. I did bring the Post-it notes today. She did bring the Post-it notes. Thankful for the Post-it notes, because I have chemo brain and I didn't remember my notebook. I
I think this is all part of it. The whole idea is that it is a learning. It's a learning for me. It's a learning for you. It's a learning for us. It's a learning for us as parents, as moms, as now, you know, you're a new parent with your new husband, and my husband and I have been together for quite some time, but we're like, you know, we're finally figuring it out.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. All of it's going to have little tidbits. There's going to be touches on it in each.
It offers permission, I think.
Yeah.
Permission that you don't need it.
I was just going to say, having said that, we don't need permission. We had that conversation the other day about, as a mom, I have permission to have opinions about being a mom. As a woman, as a human, right? Like you have permission to have opinions about whatever you want to have an opinion about.
For just my own brain, I've had to take myself way back off social media. Because of a number of things that we'll get into, but like one of the positives that had came out of it is that I was following a sleep doctor, and for infants, and she put a thing up about like timing or whatever, and I didn't realize that I'd been really like holding myself to this high standard. I have no idea how this kid sleeps. Like he doesn't even know how he sleeps, like what his preferences are, what his timing is. But like I'd been holding myself to this like vague notion of what the things that I'd read in books and whatever. And like, it's not even who I am generally, but because it was someone else offering an opinion from a place of knowing or knowledge that I didn't have, like this woman just said, like, kids are kids, like you're gonna figure it out. And I'm like, oh, like I can drop all of that. And like, that's the permission part. It's not even that. Like sometimes you don't even know that you're seeking permission to drop something because you don't know that you put yourself in that box to start with.
Yeah. You don't even know you're carrying it, but you're seeking permission to drop it.
Yeah.
So see why we want to do this? Because the thoughts and the stream of consciousness that comes along with all of it. So the January first podcast was a little bit of an introduction to us. It was a little bit of an introduction to who we are as individuals, who we are as a partnership, who this podcast is, why Three Owls, the inconspicuous. We're not exactly sure what is under that trench coat. It could be a woman, it could be Three Owls, we're not sure. And just the fact that it is hilarious. I'll see if I can find it and maybe I'll link it to somewhere below, but I believe it was actually a tweet.
It was a tweet.
It was a tweet of a woman who said she loves it when men say that they want a real woman, and she's like, oh no. I'm really Three Owls in a trench coat. He must never find out. Like how many of us are walking around like Three Owls in a trench coat because we don't know what the hell we are? Heck, we are. I don't know if we're allowed to swear. Anyway, we're all learning. I don't really have anything else to say about the January business.
I do.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
okay, let's go.
Well, because I have a question.
Okay.
So like today happens to be Wednesday. So what are you creating? You said
I had a feeling that was going to come bite me in the ass. I mean, bite me in the bum.
I'm pretty sure you get to decide if you want to swear or not.
Well, and I don't know. It's got something to do with monetizing YouTube or something. If you swear, they don't monetize you. I don't even know.
I don't think that counts.
No?
I'm going to guess no.
Especially not in an Australian accent, which that was not. Okay, so what am I manifesting today? Well, to be honest, let's just do this damn podcast and get it out before January 15th.
We set ourselves some arbitrary rules.
We did. Speaking of arbitrary rules, we do that for everything. So I have our arbitrary knitting rules. Hey, I'll mention my knitting because
that's also part of it.
It's also part of it. So what inspired me to talk to Haley, to bully her into doing a podcast, was my love for knitting and knitting podcasts. And I could spend all day, every day watching and knitting. And it just gives me so much joy to see other people do something that they love. And for me to be afforded the time to do something that I love, which is knitting. I've been knitting since I was 8. I love all things yarn related, knitting, crochet. I don't yet spin or weave, but that's a big yet. I just don't have the space or the budget for it at the moment, so we won't get into that yet because once I start, it's a slippery slope. So my 3-year-old daughter, who her favorite color is red, I had for a while back made some Spider-Man socks. Oh, bless you.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
You okay? I had made my son some self-striping Spider-Man socks that I got from Polka Dot Creek, who we will link below. She is an amazing yarn dyer and yarn shop in Airdrie, Alberta, which is near Calgary. My daughter found those and thought that they were amazing, and she demanded that I make her a pair of red socks. So I say that all in love. She didn't demand I make her socks. She asked me for socks, and I gladly will give her whatever she wants because she's one of the loves of my life. So this is just some Red Heart Super Saver, and it's in the colorway, I think it's called Cherry Red. It's just a tube sock. I did a very simple tubular cast on, not a tubular cast on, a Turkish cast on, and then increased, and then knit a tube because she's 3, so she's going to grow out of them in 5 minutes. They are really acrylic, and she's 3, and again, she's going to grow out of them in 5 minutes, so I'm not using nice yarn on it, but I did use the nice yarn from Polka Dot Creek, the Spider-Man self-striping for my 5-year-old, and they already are too tight for him. So that's a little bit about what I was knitting on earlier, and
If you don't know half of the words that she just said, that's fine. I don't know either.
Did I say a whole bunch of knitting jargon?
Yeah.
So if you're not here for knitting,
Turkish cast on.
Oh.
See, I told you this was going to be educational. Didn't even know a Turkish cast on was a thing.
So yeah, I had talked to Haley about doing a podcast because knitting podcasts are amazing and I love them, and I spend a lot of time watching them. And knitting for me is meditation. So it is, and a lot of knitters will say this, or a lot of yarn artists will say this, you know, if they're knitting or they're crocheting or if they're, you know, weaving, there's just something meditative about the process of doing the knit or insert craft here. For me, it has been just something easy that I can pick up, and it lately has been a barometer of how I've been feeling. So again, brings us back to, why are we doing this? Maybe that's why we're doing this, because it's therapy for me and you, and then we just get to offload it to a bunch of strangers on the internet. The barometer for me, when I was in the hospital getting treatment, I didn't want to and couldn't really focus on knitting, and that was a big eye-opener for me, that I needed to figure out other ways to take care of myself, other ways to be mentally well. If I wasn't feeling up to knitting or have enough brain space to knit something even as simple as a sock or dishcloth. For knitters, they'll get it. Any knitters out there, you put down in the comments what you find is your meditative knitting, and let me know that I'm not alone here. It is meditative, and when you can't do that or don't want to do that, or if you've lost your knitting mojo, it's A, a hard pill to swallow, metaphorically, and B, a really good way to realize when you sort of start to come around. That was kind of what happened for me. I was not doing well, and then all of a sudden I thought, you know what, maybe I do want to watch a knitting podcast. Maybe I do want to get my socks out and start knitting. So I did, and it slowly but surely sort of got me back into a better mental state.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to have something, whether it's knitting or whatever. Like insert your own thing here, but being able to use that, like you said, as a barometer of your well-being, because quite often, speaking from like a mental health perspective, by the time you're already like in the hole, if you don't have anything to gauge yourself against, you don't necessarily know you're in the hole until like you're way down, you're like down here. And being able to then actively find resources to help get yourself out of the hole is just so much harder.
Yeah.
And so being able to have something that you love and hold dear, and then being able to kind of sort of guide yourself by that, I think is really important. Yeah, I know that like for me, socializing is only just starting. I'm a very social creature. It's only just starting to come back because I have the time and space, and even just like thinking about where the moon is and what it's doing. Sometimes I don't have capacity for that because I'm like, well, I haven't slept. So.
Yeah, and sometimes it's sleep, and sometimes it's we're a little bit all over the place here, but I'm going to go into the momhood business. Sometimes it's sleep. Sometimes it's you've been touched a lot. and you don't want to be touched anymore. So, you know, getting a shower gives you the heebie-jeebies because you know the water is going to touch you, or going out to be with friends because you feel like you should, as opposed to because you actually want to. Haley, when I first showed up here, we had talked about the fact that I was wearing lipstick and I did my nails while I was here. She had mentioned, you know, we had talked about doing this podcast, and she said, "Are you wearing lipstick because of the podcast?" I said, "No, I'm wearing lipstick because I'm outside, because I haven't been," and I'll use air quotes, "normal" for so long that I just wanted to feel feminine.
Yeah.
And I wanted to feel like I deserve to look nice. And not that I don't look nice when I don't wear lipstick, because as we've already established, this lipstick is way too dark.
It's really nice in real time.
In real time. Just on the screen, it's quite dark. I'm going to say it's a bit of a joke because my husband doesn't like me wearing makeup. And, insert all the hate right now because my husband doesn't get to dictate what I do. He doesn't. He just likes me to look like me. But the other day I wore a dark lipstick and he said, "I love you, and that lipstick does not suit you." I love you too, honey, and I know. This one happens to be a different one, but anyway. So back to the momming piece of all of this. When you are a super social being and you are using that as your barometer and you are not being social, and then sometimes you can get so deep. There were days that not only did I not have the mental capacity, and I just didn't want to touch yarn. I didn't.
Yeah.
Wow, I was just going to go into a whole other, we might be a lot longer than I was thinking. Anyway, what I was going to say was when I left the hospital, thinking of sort of January and the new timing, I was released from the hospital early December. So I was at home for Christmas and the new year and still recovering. But so, you know, I was in okay shape, enough to be home, but just not super well. I wouldn't have called well. Haley described it as I looked less dead.
She's progressively looked less dead in the last month. Yeah.
So I'm not alive, but I'm less dead than I was.
It's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum.
Yeah, we're getting close to alive. It's pretty
We'll
close.
put it down
now.
below.
Yeah.
We won't really. Where was I going about being
discharged December?
January, rebirth, like New Year, husband. I don't even know. Momming. I don't even know. Oh, like wearing makeup and things. Yeah. And when I actually have all of my bag of clothes that I had while I was in the hospital, and it's put away and I haven't unpacked it yet, and I won't. And I haven't looked at my journal since being home, and I haven't worn any of that clothes, and I haven't sort of addressed some of the, you know, speaking of mental health, some of the mental health concerns that come with the recovery of being released from the hospital. So I don't really know where I was going with that. Maybe the January business, the new year, the new me, the new business, the new...
I think too, like, that's kind of why I like the, like, January 1st as a calendar date. But I kind of like the fact that I've got till March to kind of figure it out. Like, it's like a soft start. Because, like, yeah, I think being able to, and particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, because it's, you know, it's winter and everything is still, and you might have gone through, in Calgary, you might have gone through 2 weeks of minus 35, and we've had some, like, glorious days where you can go outside and it's 0 and there's sunsets and sunrises that are beautiful. So I think that, like, being able to have that little bit of stillness, and I mean, I created the same thing when I lived by the beach. It was, you know, January and it's hot and all the rest of it, but being able to find those moments of stillness at the start of the year to then figure out what it is that you actually want this year to be about, and then taking those steps to create it. And like that stillness for me is about creation as well as reflection. But it might be where you find what it is that is important to you to be able to set your own barometer up, or to, like, even just check in with yourself to see, like, after such a social season, are you more inclined to be an introvert and just need to like back the hell away from people for a month. Like it just depends on the individual, but like being able to figure all that stuff out and know that like you feel good when you put lipstick on and you go outside. Like it's just being able to, I guess, like tap into the, not necessarily like part of it is your essence, but also being able to figure out some space for yourself for whatever that needs to be.
Yeah, because anyone that's known me, you've known me for quite some time. Anyone that's known me knows that me to feel like me, I don't need lipstick. I don't need to do my hair. I don't, you know, I am most comfortable with my hair in a ponytail and a pair of sweatpants on. Yeah. And that's okay. And I'm quite fine to do that. It just so happened that today...
Jack really wants to be a part of this.
Jack is definitely a part of this. Today, I just felt like I wanted to be a bit more, maybe it was fancy, a little bit more feminine. I don't know. So, the Wednesday.
Oh, yes.
So what I've created for Wednesday is this podcast, and we will get this podcast edited and out by the 15th, which is not that far from now.
Nope. Also, my dad's birthday. Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday, Bill.
Yeah.
What else? Is there anything else that you have any other questions about this?
No, I feel like we're off to, you know, start as you
off to the races.
Yeah, start as you intend to be. There's been a lot of randomness, and I'm really happy about that.
And it gives me anxiety.
I think we covered off all of our points. The only bit that I would add is my best. So Terry does this cute thing with her kids. At the end of the day, they do my best part of my best day. And actually, pre-children, when we'd have like Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas or something at Terry's place, we'd go around the table and do a gratitude something, like a high and a low.
It was a high and a low, yep.
Which I also really loved and tried to instigate elsewhere to much confusion.
Just didn't take. And you introduced my husband to it, and he's like, "No, we're getting rid of that. Yeah. I don't want to do that." So
I love this.
I do too.
And so we wanted to add like that into our podcast because it's a little like snippet of gratitude. So my best part of my best day would be, well, it's always so hard because like look at
I know this is a good day.
And yeah, I'm just really grateful that we're kicking this off, and it's going to be whatever it is. And yeah, I'm grateful that I can show up for it because I love showing up to stuff.
You do.
Hey.
So a little bit of the background on my best part of my best day. On my son's 3rd birthday, I asked him what the highlight of his day was, and his response to me when I said, "Hey, bud, what was the best part of your day?" He said, "Mom, my best part of my best day was my birthday cake." And so I remember that, and then my best part of my best day became the tagline for him. And now every night we do that, and he now has a sister who he had at the time, but was 1. So she wasn't old enough to say that. But now that we're all old enough, we do my best part of my best day. So my best part of my best day, quite honestly, I know we've mentioned momhood, and Haley and I had committed that when we were speaking about what our best part of our best day was going to be, it was going to be something that we mentioned in the podcast. I didn't mention this specifically, but this little dude over here that Haley is holding, Jack, I got to snuggle with him before we hit record. And that was my best part of my best day. Because he is the chillest, coolest kid.
He's about to lose it.
He's about to lose it. I think that actually might be perfect timing.
Hey.
So what we would like you to do is watch this podcast, 1. And if you're already at the end, you've already seen that. 2, so thank you. Thank you. Oh yeah, thank you for doing that. Thanks for anybody. It's probably like our moms. Thanks for watching our podcast. Thanks for sticking around with us for the last, however many minutes, 45 minutes, we'll see. And thanks for joining us on this little adventure that we are calling the 3 Owls Podcast. If you liked it and you want to see more, you can subscribe, hit the little bell so that you get notifications. You can like the button, smash the like button, as one of my favorite yarn artists says. What else do you say? We'll get better at this. I
Well,
promise.
you-
We will
yeah.
get better at this.
We're actually really good at stuff.
We are really
Yeah.
good at stuff.
It's just this is new, and that's okay. What actually I was talking to side note, I was talking to a girlfriend the other day about not being great at stuff straight away and how that just really annoys me. And here we are.
Here we are.
Not great at it straight away.
Do you know what we're gonna do? We're totally putting this up unedited. We might bleep out where I said and Haley said, and then after that, after we bleep those out and what I just said, did we say this already? We're gonna put the timestamps at the bottom. If you want to kind of have for future, because you've already watched 50 minutes of us rambling. In the future, if you just kind of want to get a tidbit of what we're talking about, we're going to record basically like our table of contents, which we've called Just the Tip. We're going to put that right at the very beginning, so you'll be able to catch that. You've already seen it by now if you're listening to me say this. And we'll see you in, our plan is semi-monthly. So on the 15th and the 30th, we'll be releasing videos. And if we change our minds, I will edit that section out. And if not, we will...
That's our plan. It's our goal.
That's our plan. Our
good
goal
to have
right
a
now.
goal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 15th and the 30th, except in February. Obviously, it'll be the 15th and the 28th or whatever that is. Or somewhere around those where it makes the most sense. So keep your eyes peeled on this channel. Thanks again for watching.
Bye.
Enjoy.
You just did.